Your IEEE membership means access to insurance products featuring exclusive group rates, flexible benefit options, and portable coverage that stays with you throughout your career. Engineered to help protect your loved ones and your financial security. For more information, go to IEEEinsurance.com.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first IEEE-USA webinar of 2025. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. Today's session, AI Horizons, What Does Innovation, Creativity, and Ethics Mean in the Generative AI Era, is part of our Talking Tech series in partnership with the Center of Excellence in Wireless and Information Technology, or CEWIT, at Stony Brook University. We're proud to have the IEEE member group insurance program, powered by AMBA, as our sponsor for this webinar. Please note that this webinar is not affiliated with or endorsed by our sponsor. Before we begin, it is my pleasure to welcome IEEE-USA 2023 President Ed Palacio for some opening remarks. Ed played a key role in establishing our partnership with CEWIT at Stony Brook University, and we are honored to have him with us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our Talking Tech webinar, a collaborative effort between IEEE-USA and CEWIT at Stony Brook University. As a past president of IEEE-USA and a member of the faculty at the State University of New York at Stony Brook, I am honored to be here with you all. The Talking Tech series is vital to our mission of advancing technology and fostering an informed, engaged community. These webinars provide a platform for exchanging knowledge, sharing developments, and exploring the latest tech trends. Today's session is particularly special as it highlights the power of partnership and collaboration. With the support of CEWIT at Stony Brook University, IEEE-USA can deliver even higher quality content and facilitate discussion that inspire innovation and empower individuals to make impactful contributions. We'll explore the groundbreaking technologies reshaping our interactions, delving into the dynamic intersection of innovation, creativity, ethics, and generative AI. Join us as we uncover how AI is transforming what's possible in the world of communication. I encourage you to actively participate, ask questions, and engage with our esteemed panelists. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ed. Before we begin our panel discussion, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Dr. Laura Lindenfeld, who will also be introducing our panelists. Dr. Lindenfeld is the Executive Director of the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science at Stony Brook University, Dean of the School of Communications and Journalism, Vice Provost for the Academic Strategy and Planning, and a Professor of Journalism. As the Alda Center Director, she oversees a dynamic organization that has trained 15,000 scientists from all around the world. The center provides international leadership in conducting and connecting research and practice to advance effective science communications. As Dean of the School of Communications and Journalism, she oversees a team of dedicated faculty and staff, including the Pulitzer Prize winners, to educate and train the next generation of multimedia journalists and communication professionals. Without further ado, I'll now pass it off to our moderator. Welcome, Dr. Lindenfeld. We're very excited for what you and our esteemed panelists have in store for our audience today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the warm introduction. This is an exciting topic and one that's going to affect all of us, not just engineers and technologists. So we're going to have a lively conversation. I want to introduce the panelists, and then we're going to dive in and have some conversations with them, followed up by Q&A. So first up is Vivian Zhang. Vivian serves as Chief Technology Officer at Steers Substat, Inc., where she pioneers applications of AI across healthcare, finance, and education. Her team's innovations have led to a range of products like Go Dental AI or Intrinsica AI. Forbes has ranked her one of 9 women leading the pack in data analytics. That's so cool. And she also leads the New York City Data Science Academy, where she advances synergies between education and industry. And I'm sure we'll talk about that today. Our second panelist is Dr. Steven Skina. He's a distinguished teaching professor of computer science here at Stony Brook, and an expert in algorithms, data science, and natural language processing. He's currently serving as the director of the AI Innovation Institute here at Stony Brook, and he's pioneered cross-cutting research at the intersection of machine learning and algorithm design. Dr. Skina is the author of 6 influential books, and his work has informed a range of applications in areas like natural language processing and network analysis. Welcome, Steve.
Hi there.
And then our third, last but not least, Dr. Meg Shadell. She's a professor of music at Stony Brook University and a leading expert in electronic music, sound design, and human-computer interaction. Her work explores innovative intersections of sound, creativity, and machine learning. So interesting. This is going to be a great conversation. She's also an accomplished composer. I've heard some of her work myself, performed live. Her research looks at ethical and aesthetic implications of emerging technologies, making her such an important voice in conversations about AI, creativity, and innovation. So we're thrilled to have all three of you here today. Let's just jump in and get started. And I'm gonna pose a question that I think all of you will have a great response to, which is describe briefly what you see the terms innovation and creativity to mean for you and your field of work as they relate to AI. Meg, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, this one's easy for me because I am in the creative arts. So creativity is kind of built into what I do, but I have actually spent decades kind of exploring this intersection of human creativity and what was called machine learning, but now is more umbrella term, artificial intelligence. And my work really focuses on creating systems that enhance and interpret human creative expression rather than replacing it. Right now, I have just started a startup called Lyre, and it creates digital acoustic twins of architectural spaces. So this brings together my interests in sound, space, and AI. And I think I'm a power user of AI, but I don't actually develop the algorithms themselves.
That's great. How about you, Steve? What would be your perspective on this?
Well, I'm a professor of computer science, and so when I think of innovation and creativity, usually it meant developing new technologies, new algorithms, new systems. What's been interesting is as these commercial models have gotten more and more powerful, what is considered research and what is considered creativity is changing. A lot of what my students are doing these days involves using and adapting models rather than, building everything from the scratch. And so that's one of the changes that's kind of happened.
Neat. And Vivian, how about you?
I have been at the frontier to building algorithm and the startup with domain expert. So what I have seen is there are a lot of lasting difficulty to make things happen. For example, one of our startup is called Go Dental. We help dentist office to submit their claim to avoid rejection from the insurance company and advance their payment ahead of time because we can accurately predict how much they can get paid on what day.
Does it change day to day, Vivian?
What?
Does it change day to day? If you go in on Wednesday, is it a better day to get paid?
Actually, you know what? There are more than 5,500 insurance companies. They all have different requirements for the claim submission. They try to make it so difficult so you don't get money. Dental's office spend 40% of their operation costs on just getting the insurance approved.
Probably getting money from them is like pulling teeth.
Yes, yes, they make it so difficult. Like
the
doctor said, also when they get rejected from that point, there's no digital submission anymore. They're all paper filing, and they want wet signed by the doctor every time. They make it so difficult.
Yeah.
Well, already from the outset, I mean, the definition of creativity and the definition of innovation lie in the eye of the beholder. 3 very, very different responses. Let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a 2-part question. And I want you to answer the first part, and then I'll give you the second part. How about that? What do you, from your perspective, find most compelling and exciting about how AI can foster creativity and innovation? So let's dig into, you can see I'm digging into some of the positive upsides of this first. Steve, do you want to take a stab at that first?
What is cool about these models is, kind of that you can do all kinds of creative things with them, surprisingly, things that used to be impossible are now easy. You can do all kinds of things that are somewhat different. So, that weren't really possible for. Here's my favorite, if we talk about creativity, little project that we've worked on. It's a collaboration between me and the late Scott Fitzgerald. Okay. He wrote The Great Gatsby. We wrote a version of The Great Gatsby which didn't use the letter E anywhere in this. Okay. And it's perfectly readable. It tells the same story. And, how could you do this? Well, we have, my students and I used one of these models. We programmed the LLM in the right way. And, it's phenomenal. You could produce something like that. The idea is relatively simple, but the model can kind of do amazing things. And so that's kind of the thing I find exciting about here. A lot of, kind of strange dream idea projects can be done relatively easy with them.
What about you, Meg, from the vantage point from where you look at this?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of see three paradigms, which is like AI working alone, humans working alone, and then where I'm really interested in this like integration of humans and AI. So as Steve said, AI really excels at these like combinatorial tasks, this pattern recognition, but it lacks sort of this deliberative goal-oriented thinking. And humans bring this intentionality, this emotional understanding, this embodiment, and the ability to set these like meaningful creative goals. And so that's that third space, that synthesis that creates the real exciting possibilities for me.
And Vivian, I'm going to ask you all to kind of follow up with each other on this as well, because these are such different responses. I didn't know exactly what we were going to hear. What do you think, Vivian?
So I've been working on hardware solution and software solution for Minute Vertical. Like recently, we come up with our first AI camera. So all the post-production can be done by clicking through the buttons. It's used for live streaming, for TikTok, for really boosting the economy on all the direct sell channels. We also have robotic. We've been doing robots for warehouse. So right now we can do completely like robotic operated warehouse for Siemens, for food production, for e-commerce. So I see tons of application happening every day, like with clients screaming for solutions. What hardware can we use? What kind of software can we use? How we can connecting the dots to get all the problems solved.
Yeah. When I think in terms of creativity, I think in terms of, things, art. And of course, the moment these image generators came out, where people, people could put in their prompts and get images like this certainly fueled a fair amount of people thinking of interest. Part of it is testing the technology, but part of it is, wouldn't it, what would be a cool image? What does this look like? And that to me is a creative act, and one of the ways these things fuel creativity.
I love the term promptography. I think it's just a fabulous little new term that has come out of the AI imagery realm.
Can you talk more about that? I have not heard this term before.
Oh, right. So everybody's like, AI photography is entering competitions, and people are like, well, all right, fine. The image itself is good, but it was generated by AI. Is that not okay? And so sort of the people in the know are saying maybe we should have separate competitions for these AI generated things. And maybe we can call them promptography because you put the prompt in, and it isn't as simple as just saying, make a cool image. The more detailed your prompt is, the more sort of creative the output becomes. So I kind of love that new term.
Yeah. Now, as these models get better and better, the, let's say, cleverness you need to trick to develop a prompt that will trick the model into doing exactly what you want goes down. So in some sense, as these tools become easier to use, that level of magic kind of presumably becomes less important. But it's still a question of what is your image? What do you want to see? That does feel like that's got to be creative on some level.
Meg, could you talk a little bit more about using AI and music on the first part of this question? I just want to maybe let our listeners get a sense of how that works in your world.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a very strange thing. I was reminded, Steve, I've created a graphic music score using Midjourney 3, and I've given it similar prompts in Midjourney 5, and it's so much less creative because it sort of knows the things better now. So I actually liked the older version because it gave me something a lot more unique. So in the 1960s, people started with like the rise of abstract art. People started thinking, could we make these abstract music scores? So I created a 44-page image score, and it was just shown at NeurIPS, and it's been played by a variety of performers. But the basic imagery came out of Midjourney from prompts saying, can you make a graphic score? Can you evolve it, etc. And that was a really fun project. So that's one of the ways I've used AI. Another way that I use AI is when I'm working with sensors. So I am a cellist and I had a bow with a bunch of sensors in it, and I couldn't figure out how to know what my bowing was. And I'm a okay programmer, but there was so much data coming out of it, I couldn't do it. And my friend Rebecca Feebrink, well, she's my friend now, she came up with something called Wekinator, which is machine learning where you have human in the loop, where you train it. And immediately I was getting really great results. And I've sort of been hooked on the idea of this ever since, where it can really augment what you're able to do yourself. Who has a dog?
Oh, pardon me. He wasn't supposed to come.
I know which dog that is.
That was an AI dog. You know, that's a big dog. Well, let me ask the flip side of this. So in each of your domains, there's really unique and powerful assets that AI brings to the table in terms of creativity. What do you see as some of the concerns? This panel is on AI and ethics and creativity. So where do you specifically see some concerns?
Well, this is a world where rules are changing very fast. You know, kind of new questions are coming out, and the technology is moving fast, and some of them get answered, and some of them get answered without us really, just once the systems exist, it's no longer time to rethink should they exist, how they can exist. So part of the problem is that things are moving faster than we would like to be able to think and control these things. So that's on an ethics question and on a society question what I worry about. On a creativity question, I worry about, to a certain extent, what does it mean to be a creator of something? And, what is original? There are things called copyrights that kind of protect, creative works. And it's a question of what these things mean in the world to come are interesting to develop.
Yeah, Meg and I had a conversation recently about, I don't know if you want to jump in on this, Meg, where I was thinking about, you and I had both read a book by Patti Smith. And we were thinking about, I don't know if folks on this call have read this book. It's called Just Kids. And it's about this rock scene in New York in the 60s and 70s that she was involved in. And it just had me think about how hyper localized that experience was of who was actually there in the room and how different creativity around music or art or writing are now. And even more so in ways we can't yet imagine. I don't know, Meg, do you want to jump in there? This is more your domain than mine.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I keep being really hopeful that we're going to return to more people making music and making art together because we've sort of lifted this barrier. We've become sort of consumers of media instead of producers with this age of easy mechanical reproduction. And I think there's something special about drawing versus looking at a painting, about playing music with someone versus listening to music. Again, getting back to that idea of embodiment and what makes humans different from the machines. And so I'm really, really hopeful that this will actually bring in a new era of creativity. But I'm really worried about sort of the consolidation of these AI models under a few tech companies, sort of the broligarchy, creating the system that maybe prioritizes quantity over expression, and also widening the divide between those who can and cannot afford access to these tools.
In some ways, as you were speaking, I'm thinking it makes us really rethink how we define the word creativity itself, because the tools at hand are so different from what we had. And we've never had one common definition of creativity ever. The technology drives that. What about you, Vivian? Where do you see some areas of, or if you just want to jump in this conversation, we can come back to concerns.
Yeah, I feel like AI will become an essential human rights soon. People have access to AI. It's like everyone have access to YouTube. You can get to learn wherever you want on YouTube. You can learn and get assisted by AI anytime you want. So on one sense, it's bridging the economical gap among all different kinds of social group. But on the other side, because it consumes so much energy, it consumes so much resources, it could be something not everyone can access. I also see a trend, people who above AI, who know how to create algorithm, launch application, become super rich, super capable of adapting and utilizing resources. Also people below AI who are getting replaced by AI. So many companies will help to launch AI project. They're doing massive layoff. Last year, Intuit laid off 1,400 people after we finished 2 projects with them. And they renew our contract for 1 more year, and they're gonna lay off 2,000-3,000 more people.
Those are the really serious and large scale implications that have to be thought through. Meg, Steve, do you have a response
for sure
to this?
I'm just, yeah, there's all this sort of blue sky thinking of, oh, when we get AI in a company, companies shouldn't fire their employees. It should just make them more productive. I think we need to be really cognizant of this trend.
Historically, going back to the original Luddites were the people who kind of destroyed, cotton mill, kind of fabric manufacturing equipment back in 1800 because they thought it was going to just, take their jobs. And ever since then, people have kind of assumed that technology is taking jobs away. And there always seem to be more and better jobs. And so, with a trend like that, you don't want to bet against it. So that's the optimistic thing here. It is clear that there's a time of dislocation here, that there's a lot of people feeling nervous about, what is going to happen and where jobs are going. My instinct is that an AI plus a person is better than an AI. And that would be an argument that you're going to, basically people will just get better at what they do, and that's going to be what's in demand. But it feels a little different.
I know that in my own area, and this is probably worth another panel conversation at another time, but just the impact on journalism and communication, being that this is a machine that speaks, to quote our colleague and friend Jeff Jarvis, we're talking about really big changes in how people interact with and consume media. So Meg, can I come back to your point about, just thinking about workforce, and we're going to get to that question in a little bit, but the idea that people might actually spend more time creating in person together. So could there be changes in workforce that enable different ways of interpersonal creativity? Or, I mean, where do you see these trends? I'm asking you to look into a future that you can't really predict, but what are you seeing? What are you thinking?
I'm hopeful, right, that maybe this will leave more time for creativity rather than the grind of data entry, right? When you can have the AI help you with data entry, maybe this lets us go to 4-day work weeks, which leaves more time for us for recreation / creative arts. So that would be my true hope.
Vivian, what do you think on this?
Yeah, my husband actually is the chief scientist at a AI generative music company called Emperor Music. He actually have a PhD in music composition, and he's also a great programmer. They spent 5 years to create a platform, and they got acquired by Shutterstock. And Facebook later on acquired all the generated music made by them. And when we compare Matter's generated music, it's pretty much reassemble what they made already. So you can see all the AI generated knowledge get passed on to new model like seamlessly. And we have a lot of generative AI music company taking similar route.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't ever think that you would be familiar with computer music, Vivian. I'm like, wait a minute, you have a doctorate in computer music. What's his name?
Cole Ingram. You can look up Emperor Music.
All right. Oh, I've heard of the company, but I don't know that I have ever run across Cole in person. Yeah, one thing that was like sweeping the social media like 2 weeks ago is that Spotify is starting to pay composers one-offs, and instead of getting your minuscule, not even 1 penny per play, you pay, you get paid $500 to make this like vibey music. Spotify for sure is going to be using that to train an AI. Some of those tracks are like exploding in popularity. And the people that have made them are like, dang, I shouldn't have signed that really restrictive contract. And there's sort of this worry that, again, as we become these passive consumers of music, you're just going to be wandering around with your headphones on all day with your like pre-made vibes just to accompany it like any movie. Like your life becomes a movie, and suddenly the value of music is lessened because of that.
It does seem that you need to have kind of new cultural inputs into these models, or the culture will stagnate. And that I still think that's human creators. And you need to have an ecosystem where there are human creators and where there are people that can follow the human creators enough to figure out what's good and what's exciting. And, so it's, I picture these models will democratize people making music and making imaging and writing. And there's probably more of that than ever. But finding what is the good, what is it that shapes the culture and stuff like that, it's important that there be that level of aggregation, so that you can kind of build and advance a culture rather than just churn.
Mm-hmm.
I also see a lot of opportunity human being can work with AI. So give you an example, like I mentioned, we have AI camera. It's initially built for live streaming, selling goods on TikTok, everything like streamlined. But we see our client using it, combining with Boston Dynamic dog, robotic dog. So once you carry the AI camera on the back of the dog, they become a patroller. They can patrol like construction site. They can patrol the hospital side. So they can discover danger ahead of time, and they can just walk non-stoply, never get tired.
Mind-blowing possibilities.
Laura's dogs never get tired.
Oh my God, they just never get tired, and they're not AI dogs. They're just real energetic young dogs. So I'm thinking like, let's say we're in the age of AI, whatever that means, and whatever comes after, it's hard for me to imagine. But what does it mean to create something? Steve, you mentioned this before. What does it mean to create something original? What might that actually mean? And how should we think about ethics, and how conversations about ethics should evolve? I remember lawsuits around sampling from the White Album and how much you're allowed to sample or not. The technology in many ways, and your point about the culture we live in and how it advances. My background's in cultural studies, so I find this particularly fascinating. The ethical implications then also evolve out of the interactions of people with the technologies. So I'm thinking, we're going to be looking at ethical challenges and creative opportunities at individual, industrial, policy, very different levels. let's start with that question about what do you think it means to create something original?
So this I'm not an expert on. And when you say, do I know what how do I create something original? I don't have any philosophical beliefs other than I kind of know when I feel I have created something. Okay. And I felt I did that with my Gatsby without an E. Something pretty original. When I used an LLM to help write a proposal, I didn't feel that way. So there's a certain sense that, what is creativity? I think people kind of have a sense of it with what they're doing. And I don't know that these models right now have a sense of that particularly. I guess senses of novelty that you might be able to program or identify. But that's one thing that is needed. But again, if there is originality, it's got to be, there's got to be ways of protecting it and recognizing it and nurturing that. And historically, this was done by certain legal methods of things like copyrights and patents. That was one notion of originality.
Right.
It was done by anti-plagiarism policies, so that people who wrote things felt really upset if someone plagiarized them and stuff like this. And I'm not sure I know what the analogous mechanisms are for the age to come, where these models, will spit something out, and if you tell them, oh, that's too close to what you wrote, well, I'll write something different. Anyway.
But Steve, you have patents, right?
I have patents. I am proud to say,
Yeah.
patents are a kind of a mechanism to preserve creativity or to reward it and to nurture it. There are advantages and disadvantages to the patent system, the way that it works, and a large amount of creativity is not something that is protected by the patent system. So this is something to try to define and figure it out. Again, part of the problem is patents and copyright issues tend to become legal issues, and legal issues are a fairly blunt way to deal with a lot of these problems.
Yeah, like the patent troll companies. I think copyright and patent are really have become tools of the companies that can afford the best lawyers, and we have an opportunity now to sort of rethink that as these AI models are coming up. Vivian, do you have any patents, or how do you work with your companies?
Our company hold all the licenses and patents.
Yeah.
So I feel like in today's age, everyone learns so much things, like be able to connecting dots, like combining A and B, coming up with something better than A, better than B, sound like more original creation in today's age. Like, give you an example, two of my friends at Stanford came up with an idea called Nexa AI. They're called Edge AI. So basically, all the large language model have like 200 billion parameters. It's impossible to run on small device. So they have technology to reduce it to 5 billion parameter. So it can be run on any device. That's why it's called Edge AI. Edge means small equipment of the Internet of Things. They can turn all the PC into AI PC. And combining with language model and action model, they can break down people's ask, like, oh, I want to book 2 weeks vacation to Japan. Large language model will be able to break down to tasks, book hotel, book flight, book restaurant. Then action model will be able to execute everything from end to end. So essentially, large language model plus action model become your personal assistant on your own device level. But this can be applied to any vertical in industry. That's why we see tons of creativity in this AI landscape now.
So I can see that we have a lot of questions popping up, which is great. You've provoked some interesting conversations. I'm going to ask one more question that I want to hear you talk about, and I think others will as well. And then I'm going to suggest we segue to Q&A, which Jonathan's going to help us handle. But let me ask you this, because you're all involved on some level in workforce development and professional development, continuing education. Where do you think we're headed, or where we should be headed with regard to creativity and innovation when you think about workforce development and professional development, especially considering some of the ethical considerations we've discussed here? What should we be doing as educators, broadly writ?
My theory is that as the technology is changing very rapidly, and it's hard to adjust what you're doing. If we're thinking about education, if I'm going to have to educate a student to join the workforce in 4 years, they come in as a freshman, what's the world going to be like then? I still believe that a general broad education is actually what is going to be important. I think the important thing about writing is not so much grammar, but as a tool for thinking and for organizing thoughts and for working things out. And so if you ask me what I would be thinking, I think that people with a broader educational background are probably more likely to thrive than people with very specific educational backgrounds, just because a lot of the specific skills, there's a danger that gets eaten with lunch. But I think a broader, holistic perspective is actually an important thing.
How do you see this, Vivian?
I've been teaching my kids. So when I have new AI gadgets, new software, I teach them the first. And my daughter actually started to work since she was 9 years old. This year, she already got her full-time internship doing AI creation for social media company. I try to let them to experience AI productivity firsthand.
Yeah, so this ties in. I made a couple notes and I was like, we need to have this at all levels, from K-12 to higher ed and continuing professional development. I think we need to be teaching with AI, right? Leveraging its power for this personalized learning, simplifying complex topics. And then that would free up the educators to focus on what makes us uniquely human, like fostering critical thinking, as Steve said, collaboration, adaptability, and a lifelong love of learning. And I think equally crucial is teaching about AI. So what is its societal impact, the ethical implications? What are the governance challenges? So we need to equip students and professionals not just to use these AI tools effectively, but to critically evaluate them, understand their limitations, biases, and potentials for misuse.
Are you already doing some of this in your various teaching?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you and I put in an NSF grant to do this very thing, Laura.
That's excellent. Yes. Steve, how about you? Where does this enter your teaching?
I teach a graduate level, master's level data science course using my book, I'm proud to say. But again, one of the things that there is questions of human-centric AI and what the issues are about dealing with people. The biggest impression I have is that this is something that is changing very fast. And, it's not clear who's controlling the ethical aspects of these kind of things. I noticed, in today's news, the new administration, one of the first things they did was delete whatever ethical AI policy from the previous administration. And so not amend, but that's all this stuff about safety and data privacy, just rescind it. And it's hard to know how the world is going to react in this kind of a climate.
I'm CTO at NYC Data Science Academy. We professionally train people in data science, place them into job for the last 12 years. We already helped more than 5,000 people to get career in this field. We, of course, have AI bootcamp, data science bootcamp, machine learning bootcamp, data analytic bootcamp for different career paths.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, when I looked you up on LinkedIn, that company, one of my former doctoral music students is like either working for you or has gone through your program. And I was like,
we have trained about 30 musicians, PhD in music, get job in AI's field.
Yep.
I love this small world meeting right here. Let me have Jonathan jump in, because I know there's a lot of questions, and I'm going to let him take over the Q&A section.
Yeah,
Maggie, are you talking about Joseph, right?
Yeah, Yes.
Yeah, he just graduated from my boot camp.
Oh, excellent. He's great.
All right, well, first off, thank you to our esteemed panelists and moderator for the great discussion. Laura did mention that we got a lot of questions during the presentation. Have also been seeing a lot of discussion amongst our viewers and audience as well, which is fantastic. So just to let you know, folks, we will now be taking audience member questions. Please post your questions in the live chat or comment section, and we'll load them onto the stream for our panelists to address. We did receive some questions early in the webinar that might have already been answered during the discussion, but we'll go ahead and address them again for our viewers who tuned in later or need a refresher. So everyone, the first question that we received, sorry, just going through all of them. Oh, here it is. So one of our audience members, Patrick, asked, I would like a clear definition of artificial intelligence. Does it require adaptation of a prediction model, which I think is machine learning? For any of you, for our panelists, feel free to jump in if you have a response or would like to address the question.
Okay, so I will say I'm a computer science professor. And I get a little queasy at the name artificial intelligence. When we're talking about it as an academic field or something like that, we're talking about machine learning. Machine learning is the real technology underlying these things. AI has become kind of the popular term for all that's going on here. AI, it's not clear you have a definition of this. Alan Turing had a famous idea of that, you would have, achieve intelligence when you could, can fool people into thinking that you're having a discussion with a computer instead of another person. And by that definition, certainly a lot of what goes on these, communications with ChatGPT feel like you're talking to a real person, maybe one who's smarter and faster than we are. It's hard to know what is really, what is really the test of whether you have intelligence or not. This is probably a philosophical question, but I separate machine learning from, the buzzword of AI, and machine learning is clearly what's making this stuff work. It's possible that more old-fashioned ideas in what used to be called AI, involving search and things like that, are becoming maybe more important. But at heart, it's machine learning underneath it.
Yeah, I would love to add to that. So we have data science with machine learning bootcamp. We also have AI bootcamp. We're teaching totally different skill set there. In AI bootcamp, we teach skills such as vector database, graph, semantic search, zero shot, few shots. Those are the mostly well-used technology for building AI solution. For bootcamp in machine learning, we teach like linear regression, clustering, KNN, those traditional prediction methodology. So we treat them separately as a employment focusing program.
Yeah, I would say AI is the big umbrella. And even with AI, we have AGI, artificial general intelligence, or ASI, artificial superintelligence, and then machine learning is a subset of that. And I think that it's deliberate that we're not defining AI because it is the sort of placeholder for whatever technology we have at the moment, where machine learning is very much these specific algorithms that Vivian already said.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for the great question, Patrick. So this next question from our audience member, Bob. Bob asked, is it possible to prove that AI created an image versus it being an authentic representation of a person in a place or doing something suspicious or criminal?
So there are, what do I know about this stuff? You have people working on classifiers. Can you give it an image? Can you tell if it's AI or not? And these work to some extent, although of course, as these image generators get better and better, presumably it gets harder and harder to tell what is an AI. There is, some thought that these commercial models are interested in watermarking the output, which would mean adding something to the image that would have the property that in a court of law you could extract this watermark and prove that it's an image of yours. But it's not clear. It's never been clear to me how much some of these technologies exist. It's not clear to me how much they're actually in use by the main providers of these the open AIs of the world. So this is potentially a problem. You can imagine these models getting good enough that it becomes very, very hard to separate what is a real image from what is a synthesized image. A lot of what's going to be necessary to prove these things is a question of provenance. When was the image created? What evidence was it that you had created this image? And I think that's probably what's ultimately necessary to discriminate this.
Thanks so much, Stephen. If anyone has another response, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question.
Yeah, Vivian, any thought on deepfakes?
I know General Attorney Office constantly hiring AI engineers. That's my response on that.
I'm really astonished by the voice duplicators that are out there now. Warn your grandmas.
I have seen deep fake on Elon Musk doing fundraising, and people actually give this complete scam money.
One of our questions, one of our folks listening in posted that he received, if you scroll through the comments, a call from his deceased father generated by AI. So yes, geez.
All right, thanks so much, everyone, and thanks for the great question. So this next one I'm not entirely sure if it was a question, but I'm still going to address it anyways. Our audience member, Terry, stated, musicians and artists need to eat too. How can they be professional and monetize their creativity if they can't own it? Any thoughts?
That's where, oh, go ahead, Vivian.
I've been working with musicians and help them to turn into data scientists, AI engineers. So my experience is because they're training in the past, they're super disciplined, they always deliver, and they learn things really fast. So all the professional traits they had previously really helps them land career in the new field much faster. Also, I work with a really creative mechanical engineer. He designs 3D printing. He has his own light fixture, but doing AI help him to do better work because he can utilize a lot more tools. So I think musician artists should make more because all the great quality they have.
Well, I guess the question really is, are they still musicians and artists, or are they ex-musicians turned, AI people and mechanical engineers? So the question is really, which gets into a whole ecosystem, is a question of how is it that you pay artists and you pay musicians, and this is ultimately, I guess, an economic question. And that's outside my league. I gather even big shot rock stars these days can't make their money from Spotify feeds. They make it from touring and stuff like that. And so the question of what is the channel by which these people get paid is an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned Joe, so he was looking for an opportunity to become a college professor, so continuing the pyramid scheme of music. And now is like, this is going to be my day job, is going to be a data scientist. I'm pivoting. And he's grateful that he can do the work, but I think he'd much rather be making a living as a musician. And Steve is exactly right. Everybody that I know, you have to do live shows in order to make money because, again, the recording industry is so controlled by the a few top companies. And so I think that's a really good lesson for us as we're looking towards generalized AI, is to really watch for those companies that are consolidating.
Right. But a lot is the model. We are doing a live show now and we're not making any money.
Oh, I'm getting a lot of money for this, Steve. Are they not paying you?
Okay, no, then I missed that part.
We're getting paid by the social impact, helping people.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone, and thank you for the question, Terry. Or hope we answered your question. This next one, also not necessarily a question, but our audience member Alan said, "I'd like to see a comment on the ethical use of AI in regards to energy consumption. It is driving new technologies such as fusion energy, but is now a major contributor to global warming." Any thoughts on that statement?
So my feeling, okay, obviously, these new machine learning technology, these GPUs take incredible amounts of energy. I mean, and one data point, it's maybe a private data point, is it is hard, adding a GPU cluster to our building in computer science has been enough to saturate all the power in the building. And we can't add any more, GPUs to the building simply because there isn't enough electrical capacity with the campus connection and all this kind of stuff. So yes, that uses a lot of energy. There's also clearly a lot of work going on in trying to reduce the amount of energy that these models take, particularly in inference, which was the phase where they're, answering queries, because that's something that is clearly affecting the bottom line of any company that's running a chatbot or any other form like this. My personal instinct is that we're nearing a point where the giant energy cost of training models is kind of beginning to run out of gas. Okay, and so I don't think that's, we're going to keep using 10 times as much energy to train the next model just because the technology is beginning to saturate. But so I do expect these models will become more energy efficient. But yes, they clearly use a lot of energy now.
So I like to think Denver does this model where if you build a new building, a tiny percentage of your budget has to go to the public arts. So I think it would be fascinating if like all AI processing, if like a tiny percentage of that had to go into this like shared resource of trying to solve global weirding, so that you sort of put a tax towards solving the problem that you yourself are creating.
Okay, I think you may have been cut off. I don't know if I didn't hear.
Apologies, I was muted. Sorry about that. Thank you, everyone, and hope we addressed your question, Alan. Thank you, Stephen. This next question from our audience member, Mike. Do you suppose that as the output of generative AI pollutes its own input, the quality of the output could collapse?
Absolutely. At NeurIPS, it was really interesting, and now I'm going to blank on his name, but the guy that like tried to push Sam Altman out at OpenAI,
Ilya.
Oh, yeah, said that basically the data that we have so far used to train the models is like a fossil fuel for AI, right? And we've already exhausted it. And the synthetic data that we're creating now is not as powerful. And we are going to be sort of circling the drain a little bit here. So I found that a really interesting analogy of the fossil fuel, but that it's already gone.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less concerned about this for a couple of reasons. First, theoretically, when we run out of fossil fuel, if you take that analogy, people will find something else. It will be solar, that there will be market incentives to develop other kind of approaches. It feels that we have been, these models are much more data hungry than I think in heart of heart, they really kind of need to be. It's clear that they, you should, if you can't learn how to read and write English after reading every single book in the library, then there's something wrong with how you're learning it. And I do think that more data effective methods for training are kind of something that is going to be worked on now that the traditional power law approaches that are kind of have been fueling the increasingly larger models seem to be producing diminishing returns. My guess is the world will come to it will start being more important to develop data relatively data economical methods, and I suspect that that's doable.
Yeah, with my company, Stony Brook keeps asking, can we patent anything? And I'm like, no, it's just a process of linking technologies that haven't been linked. But the exciting thing that we're going to own is a data set. So I think that's the other thing, is that we can, knowing that there are AIs, we can collect much broader data sets that the AI can then work with, much like that cello bow that was spitting out way too many numbers for me to deal with. I think we can start thinking of collecting larger and larger data sets that we never would have thought to try to analyze before. And Vivian?
I feel like on algorithm level, there are always ways you can stabilize the quality of the outcome before you propagate the bad side or disadvantage into the next loop. So I'm not super concerned by this based on my own practical real world experience.
Thanks so much for your responses, everyone, and thank you to our audience member here at question. So, folks, I know we are reaching the end of the hour. We've already received confirmation from a majority of our panelists that they can stay on. Unfortunately, our panelist Meg will have to pop off at 3, but we'll try and get to as many questions with her before she pops up. So, this next question, very interesting question I'd like to highlight. Terry asks, "What is creativity?" It's kind of going into more of like a philosophical, I guess, kind of a discussion. But is this about extrapolating the known, which AI can do, or is it some mystical brain spark which AI cannot currently do?
I mean, we're trying to answer this question, right? I just got funding to have a postdoc, and we're actually going to study language and music and creativity within those, doing some human experiments and then trying to make a model of creativity. And the thing that we're most excited about is that we tend to think of like creativity as this lone genius. And I think that that's the wrong way to go around it. I think creativity depends on community. And so what we're trying to do is create these models that actually embed this social aspect. And maybe in the future, when we have different kinds of AIs, they can work together and perhaps reach this like system 2 creativity, this slower deliberative reasoning, versus system 1, which is this fast intuitive processing.
One thing I have found is that I like everybody else have been amazed by how some things that people thought really required creativity, these AI models seem to be able to do. The classic example is these, when you think about like Go and chess and these programs that can do things that certainly seem like they're creative. And part of it is, I guess, that a lot of the tasks that people have thought of as hard may not be as hard as people kind of had thought. Okay, that's, I guess, the one way that I think about it. So I don't know for sure I know what creativity is, but people certainly ascribe creativity to things that don't don't necessarily be so hard. I've seen zoos where they have the elephant, they give it a paintbrush and the elephant paints. Okay, the paintings look good to me, on an abstract sense. Okay, is that being creative? This is a definitional thing.
I always feel like a lot of AI model we are using day to day is deterministic model. The behavior is predictable. It may calculate thousands of steps ahead of time, so it can beat human being in Go and chess. But still, most of the AI model predicts things they have seen. So you have to feed a lot of human knowledge into the model in order to generate something close enough to what human being can create. So as you said, combining both of them will get the best result.
Thank you so much. And I know we're at the end of the hour, and we will and Meg has to pop off. So thank you so much for joining us today. Loved having you as part of our discussion. Folks, if you need to reach out or have any questions, further questions you'd like to ask her, as well as our other panelists, we've included them on the screen. But yes, thank you so much, Meg.
Yeah, thank you. And
Take
Vivian,
care.
we should get together in New York sometime.
Yes, I will include my husband.
Excellent.
And Jill.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
We'll nerd out on music. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
So folks, we'll move on to the next question. Let me see. From our audience member, Jeff. Jeff asks, is there a risk of large language models might homogenize students' voices and cultures into the common denominator of the past? If so, how might we assure that students use the tools to enable unique voices?
So, certainly, if everybody is using the same LLM to do their writing, okay, this feels like a homogenization process. So that's certainly a fair story. There's been a lot of research into how much does these models really know about different cultures and such. So the story is, if you have a model speak in Arabic, okay, tell it to speak in Arabic, a lot of what it assumes about culture is still the United States culture. You can see that that this is kind of encoded into the model, and my instinct here is that writing at its best is a tool for thinking, and it's important that we it is an educational question of how do you make sure that people, when they're students, when they're learning, are learning to write as a way of organizing their thoughts rather than produce this grammatically perfect thing from an LLM. And so I think it is a problem. And I'm not sure that you would like to find a mechanism where people are, I think, banned from using these tools too early in their training. Okay, if you want to be a computer scientist and learn how to program, the last thing you need to do is to use one of these models to at the beginning, because you're not going to learn the real thought process. And I'm sure the same thing is true with writing in general.
Yeah, as an educator, I think it's a common challenge for both professor and the student. The student cannot resist the help from the LLM. And for us, we don't want to see like identical solutions everywhere. So what I have been doing is asking students to look up concepts and learn the thinking process, but write the answer within their own capability. And as educators, we can tell whether it's their original work or generated by AI, like the choice of the word, the structure of the sentence. So through this kind of communication, it can help this problem a little bit.
Historically, I'm old enough to remember the coming of the pocket calculator, and that was supposed to be the end of the world in math. There were educational practices developed in a way that this was put off to a point where it could be dealt with. And certainly I remember the time when the coming of Google and Wikipedia was deemed the end of the ability to do research and stuff like that. And somehow education seems to have figured this stuff out. And there was a transition point, and I'm hoping there will be a transition point here too.
Yep, I totally agree.
Okay.
It's always going to be challenging in the beginning, then everyone is settled and happy with that.
Thanks so much, Steve and Vivian. Apologies, I realized I was muted again. Hope that answered your question, Jeff. Thanks for the great question as well. This next question from our audience member Prasad. Prasad asks, how will artificial intelligence change education? Any thoughts?
Well, part of it, we're in a very fast-moving time. Kind of when you talk about what is AI doing and what is artificial general intelligence and where does it go, does it, the question is, my first question is, how does artificial and general intelligence change, what people need to do? Okay, you can, if you believe in a singularity, the world will change and that's sucked up and all the people will disappear because the robots can do everything. If we're in that kind of a world, that's unfortunate. So, part of it is that we're at a time of a lot of change now. And the question is, does the change level off to the point where one can think intelligently about how education should change? Okay. Or it's hard to do while everything is kind of changing. Okay. I still, in my art of arts, believe that learning how to write and learning how to think is important. I still, in my art of arts, believes that learning math and how to think and reason about these things is important. I believe that having a wide background of knowledge so you can compare things to do it and assess sources and have some background for reasoning about things is important. And I'd like to think this will still be true, even as machines become smart.
I feel like from what I have seen at my own school and Columbia, we see two big hits. First of all homework and exam need to be completely redo. Students tend to use AI to come up with some initial question and work upon that. So current homework and exam system won't work anymore. New way of challenging their thinking process and the learning outcome need to be reestablished. Also, it will loop back to the teaching content. A lot of education material need to be reduced because AI is enabling students to learn everything 10 times faster, 100 times faster, and come up with their solution a lot faster too.
I will believe that they are learning, that they are able to come up with their solutions 10 times faster. The question of whether they're learning 10 times faster is less obvious to me. Okay. And, the big fear, I do believe that there's something called Metcalfe's law. We're talking to a bunch of electrical engineers. Metcalfe's law says the power of a network grows quadratically with the number of nodes in it, because you have more things, the more you can react to, the more valuable it is. And the more things that are in here, it still feels the more effectively you can react and deal with information. And it's important to me that people still be able to retain things and not, in order to, kind of understand or evaluate or to deal with an outcome from one of these models, it needs to be done from a background of skills and a background of knowledge.
I have a little bit different view. I feel like with AI, people can have less knowledge, but more skill to looking for knowledge. Like if someone never coded before, if they can use AI to come up with their own website in 2 hours, it works better for me than teaching them one entire semester from all the basic things. I feel like AI is really changing the knowledge adapting to hacking skill, how to get something done way faster.
There are different kinds of skills and there's different kinds of knowledges and things like that. I kind of believe that there are technological problems and things you want to delegate to a machine, but there's still a level of evaluating the output. If we're thinking about a knowledge thing as opposed to an artifact producing thing, do I believe that I can get the AI to write me a document quickly? That's producing an artifact. Does it help me understand that article, what is in that artifact? the answer is no. Okay, and so it is important that I think people, kind of if you're writing a report to do some kind of a proposal or do kind of a thing, it's important that you understand it, not just that the model is kind of producing it. And that's where I think the role for knowledge and analytics is important, as opposed to in the artifact production of a program or a document.
I have to admit, I totally agree with you, because if human beings don't have the knowledge to tell whether the artifacts are true or not, then it's going to be a totally disaster.
And it's not obvious where you get this knowledge these days, or something. It's clear that, if you come to a world where the model knows everything, I don't have to know anything. That is an unfortunate chain of events. And so it's a question of making sure you put these things at the right place in the educational pipeline. That, I think, is going to be the trick that needs to be dealt with.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing. I have to admit, I think hacking skill plus fundamental knowledge would be the best solution.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you both so much for the great debate and insights as well. I know, especially when it comes to AI and in school as well, there's still a huge debate going on regarding like what is ethical, what is allowed in schools, or how students can even use AI in general, or even if they're allowed to use it in their studies. There's still a lot of you know ambiguity regarding that. So I think this is definitely something that's worth delving into in the future as well. But unfortunately, we are out of time. And again, I know we could go on and on about this. I think maybe we might look into opportunities to discuss this, delve into this further in a future webinar as well. But I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to all of you, our esteemed panelists, and our fantastic moderator for facilitating our discussion and for your expert insights. Your discussion on this topic has highlighted both the societal implications and immense opportunities that it presents. And we loved having you all with us today. So thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in and for your great questions as well. A few announcements before we end things today. First, one moment please. We've just opened up registration for our 2025 IEEE-USA Congressional Visits Day, which will be held on April 8th through the 9th. CVD is an annual event that brings IEEE members to Washington, D.C. to raise visibility of and support for engineering and technology. It's a rare chance to introduce yourself, your colleagues, your company, and your profession to our elected officials. It's also a great opportunity to discuss legislation and issues that are uniquely important to IEEE members. AI is definitely one of those topics that is very vital and very big with our members. We even have an AI policy committee within IEEE-USA made up of volunteers who are passionate about the subject. So we'd love to have you all join us in CVD in DC. Next up, IEEE-USA. If you haven't heard, IEEE-USA is sailing to the Western Caribbean in 2025. From the tropical beauty of the Bahamas in 2023 and the majestic splendor of Alaska in 2024, our cruising saga continues in 2025 to the Western Caribbean. IEEE-USA will be hosting a 5-night Western Caribbean cruise on the October 27th through the 1st of November 2025. We'll be cruising in style aboard the Royal Caribbean's Mariner of the Seas from Galveston, Texas, to stops in Costa Maya, Mexico, and Cozumel, Mexico, before concluding our cruise back in Galveston. We'll be opening up the booking portal soon, and you can find out soon as it does by signing up for email updates on the cruise website. The link has been provided below. Finally, have you missed out on your 2024 professional development hours, or PDHs? Don't worry, there's still time to catch up. Pardon me. There we go. Watch an IEEE-USA webinar and apply for your PDHs by January 31st, 2025. So you have a little bit over a week. This is a great opportunity to stay ahead in your professional development and ensure you meet your goals for the year. To apply for your PDHs, simply watch one of our informative, engaging webinars, then head over to the link provided on the screen. If you enjoyed the content in today's webinar, be sure to check out our extensive catalog of other presentations. and publications available on demand on our website for your viewing pleasure. If you haven't yet, please be sure to like and subscribe to our social media channels, and don't forget to check back daily for updates on upcoming events. Have a great day, everyone.